Hello and welcome back to Home Somewhere Else. We'll be continuing where we left off, which, if you recall, is after Chad found Fred again after finding, Mothoc. And he found that Fred was fighting this monster that they were also sort of fighting. And after subduing it, having a little argument too about, what's going on, the fact that Fred hasn't told him that he has powers, I guess. Um, Another monster appears, and apparently this one is more threatening than the previous one. And yeah, so I guess more fights will be ensuing. Hmm. I wonder where Bruce is. He's probably supposed to be helping, but I guess not. Anyways, but yeah, so without further ado, let us jump right into it and see what happened. You mutter nervously under your breath, barely able to comprehend the two monstrosities in front of you. Fred, however, holds his, fighting his stance as he looks over your opponents. Mothoc holds a similar stance to Fred, keeping an intense focus directed at the beasts, shifting slightly to readjust his grasp on you. Chad, just breathe, okay? Do as I say, and we'll be fine. We're all in this together, right, Mothoc? The large moth man nods confidently, sizing up the opposition while doing so. How the two of them are acting so calm is beyond your scope of understanding, seeing as you can't stop your body from shaking. The two monsters in front of you seem like corruptions of some normal people. They all have protruding bones and tendrils all over their bodies. The tiger is the largest of the monsters you've seen, somehow able to spin like a power drill through the air. Your chances of surviving a direct assault from it are probably pretty low. Certainly doesn't inspire much confidence. The hyena is somehow more worrying, covered in rotten skin and growing pustules, along with the bony protrusions, its bare razor's sharp claws, the middle one much longer than the others and leaking a vile greenish liquid. Every drop that hits the water beneath it sizzles and boils, emitting a horrid stench. Everything about it makes your stomach turn. The glowing green blisters, its rotting skin, and its viney growths. You couldn't have imagined such a thing existed. But alas, here it is, and it's looking right at you while heaving and gasping for air. Just stay calm and do exactly as I say, alright? I need you both to work with me. While the three of you continue to hold a defensive position, the two monsters begin to circle around your group in different directions, looking for an opening. Shouldn't we? The second you begin to speak, the corrupted hyena bolts towards you in a violent fever. Fred's response is nearly just as instantaneous, thrusting his hands up into the air and making thick ropes of kelp to shoot out of the lake towards the toxic beast. They wrap around the hyena's legs and retract into the water, slowly dragging the monster back towards the lake. The tiger roars before beginning to charge as well, and Fred's gaze shoots to the beast as the shepherd's fists uppercuts the air between him and the tiger. You struggle to hold on as the earth shakes beneath you, the ground exploding underneath the tiger. A dense column of roots erupts from the soil, carrying it with a hefty-looking rock from below the surface which slams into the tiger's jaw like a monstrous fist, launching it into the air. It flies back towards the lake as well, hitting the earth hard and skidding a short distance into the water, narrowly missing the hyena. The column of roots sinks back into the soil instantly, the ground rumbling as Fred moves his hands once again. Before the beast could recoup from the landing in the lake, more kelp rises from the water and wraps around it. It's still able to move somewhat, but more kelp emerges to pin the tiger below the water. The hyena, meanwhile, has been slicing away at the seaweed, dragging it into the water, and with one final slash, it is free from its bindings. Your gaze nervously shifts to Fred, finding him sweating heavily, his breath ragged. Still, though, a determined spark remains in his eyes. Get ready, guys. Your eyes focus on the monster, who in turn has his sights solely on you. A rotten tongue falls out of its mouth, licking its bony lips. The hyena sprints almost twice as fast as before, leaving a trail of putrid green bile behind him. Fred grits his teeth before swiping and kicking the air, sending roots, vines, and thorns cascading towards the monster. Fred, tell us what to do. If you keep doing everything yourself, you're just gonna burn yourself out. Fred seemingly ignores you, punching the air faster and faster as the monster dodges every attack at breakneck speeds. carving a path of desolation through the greenery surrounding it with each motion as the poisonous liquid splatters around. Damn it, you stubborn dog. If only it wasn't so damn fast. Maybe I could. Your frantic mental scrambling to come up with a plan is cut short as Fred forces the thing to jump to avoid a thorny whip aiming to trip it. As soon as its feet leaves the ground, a smirk crosses Fred's face. Gotcha! He crouches down, flinging his arms out to the sides, palms facing outward. In turn, two massive leaves sprout from the ground where it looks like a monster's going to land, opening skyward like a massive Venus flytrap. Several long, thorny vines dance out from beneath the vines, ready to turn the gargantuan foliage into an organic Iron Maiden the moment the monster lands. As it nears, Fred's smirk grows, and mere moments before it touches down, it swings his arms back in, crossing them both in front of himself. The leaves respond in kind, clamping down on the hyena. At least, they should have. In the blink of an eye, the monster slams one of its claws downwards into the trap, balancing itself on that one claw for a brief moment. Then it spins with its other claw outstretched, mulching the trap effortlessly, and uses that momentum to fling itself towards you and Mothoc, massive claws poised to run you both through. Shit, look out! Time slows as you watch it get closer and closer. Instincts take over for both of you, and as Mothoc's body heaves backwards, you thrust a fist forward, unconsciously fighting down the urge to scream in terror. However, before your fist can even manifest, a tree root springs from the ground and blocks a strike. The claw embeds itself into the deep hard wood, allowing for Mothoc to safely put some distance between you and the monster. Fred continues to swipe the air, causing more roots to grow and around the monster's arm. By now, your heart is pounding in your ears, drowning out every other sound around you. Your claws are beginning to dig painfully into Mothoc's shoulders, but you barely even notice. What the hell? What the fuck is even going on? What are we supposed to do? Mothoc skids to a stop, his grip on you tighter than ever, to the point where it's almost painful. You barely have any time to notice, though, before you both realize that the ground beneath your feet is shaking violently, coupled with the distinct sounds of cracking bones and roaring. Though the action is unnecessary, your eyes snap back to the lake, and you can tell instantly that the tiger is gone, though the water where it was once standing is fiercely shifting, as if draining into something. Move! Not needing to be told, Mothoc was already crouching down, and with a mighty shove upwards, launches you both high into the air. The tiger erupts from the ground below less than a second later, spinning upwards with a gut-wrenching roar. Mothoc extends his wings as best as he can with you on his back, slowing your descent while the tiger arcs beneath you, drilling back beneath the surface once again. When Mothoc's feet hit the ground, he takes just a moment to regain his balance before regrouping with Fred, whose eyes are now frantically scanning the ground. He looks even more exhausted than before now, gritting his teeth while holding his arms out, firmly keeping the hyena held in place, though if his arms shaking is any indication, he won't be able to keep it like that forever. Especially with how rapidly the hyena is fighting against the roots. Thankfully, though, it seems like it's finally been properly captured. He got it! He finally got it! Good job, Fred! In an act of animalistic desperation, the hyena bites into its arm and begins to rip its own flesh, tearing open a disgusting blister. The hyena's wounds begin to spurt out a toxic greenish-purple pus onto the roots. The plants begin to melt and turn into a black sludge. That is called counting your chickens before they hatch, Chad. Fred's eyes go wide and he lowers his arms as his roots are melted away, almost in defeat. He gulps harshly, but then brings a finger up to his temple, scratching awkwardly at the side of his head. Well, I've, never seen something like that before. Fred shakes his head and takes a deep sigh as the monster frees himself of his restraints. Despite the goofy grin on the German Shepherd's face, it's plain to see that this battle is really taking its toll on him. The sight fills you with even more panic. Nonetheless, Fred narrows his gaze at the monster and resumes his fighting stance. Let's dance, pretty boy. False bravado. Enviable, you suppose, since you're struggling to contain your shaking. Your muscles hurt solely from the tension, and you haven't even done anything. Before the monster could move a muscle, Fred unleashes a fury of punches into the monster's direction. A cavalcade of splintered branches and roots tear through the soil. They're sloppier than usual, coming out jagged and fragile. The roots shoot directly at the hyena's face, but its neck snaps jerkingly to the side, followed by the rest of its body as it twists around it, continuing to race towards you, while flailing its arms wildly, slashing through the roots with ease. Fred continues to punch and uppercut the air, each attack growing weaker and weaker than the last. But it does little to stop the demon, who continues to dodge, rip, and slice through every single attack effortlessly. You can't even understand how something made of rotten flesh and bone could move so fast. Have to do something. We have to do something. Damn it, Fred, let us help! It's fine. Dodging is all you need to do right now. With a kick forward, a strong root, sharpened to a point, erupts directly in front of the hyena, giving it no time whatsoever to react, and yet it does. Just barely, it twists its body to the side, avoiding impalement. However, it does still manage to hit its side, tearing a gash through its rotten flesh. Completely unfazed though, it continues its rush, forcing you all to dodge as it swipes its claws wide, narrowly missing. Damn it, we have to fucking do something! You quickly scan the area, looking for anything that could turn the tides of this fight in your favor. As you do though, something dawns on you, piercing through your panic-ridden mental fog. Wait, they've never gone after Fred, have they? They've only been attacking Mothoc and me. Fred, listen to me! They're aiming for Mothoc and I, so we can be bait while you find a way to kill them. Fred's ears prick up towards you as he staggers back to his feet, shaking his head. I can't kill them! Mothoc, look out below! The moment Fred finishes his command, Mothoc is already in the air, having sensed the earth rumbling beneath his feet. The abomination rips its way out of the ground and bursts into the air once more, going higher than before, but thankfully still not fully able to reach you and Mothoc. Mothoc just lands as the tiger burrows deeper into the dirt, drilling through the thick roots and rocks as it charges up another assault. Once on the ground, you look at Fred, who is still slicing and punching the air, a cold sweat forming on your back as you continue to see the shepherd exert himself. What do you mean you can't kill them? They're gonna rip us to shreds! I just can't, Chad. Why the hell not? If we don't do something, we're going to be the ones to die. Before Fred has a chance to respond, you find yourself once again launched into the air, with Mothoc seemingly having felt the tiger again. His jump is shorter though, this time more to the side than upwards. Sure enough, a second later the tiger erupts once again from the earth. Fred's attention snaps to it almost instantly. He stomps his foot onto the ground before kicking high into the air. An array of massive roots shoot towards the drill-like monster, hardening under him at a steady angle. Another series of hand gestures follows. The roots seem to grow even thicker and curve upwards as the tiger crashes onto the wooden ramp before hitting the ground. The large beast's trajectory was now aimed towards a hyena rather than re-entering the earth. Spiraling uncontrollably, the behemoth rolls towards its monstrous counterpart at breakneck speeds. A mere second before fatally impacting, the hyena manages a massive leap away from the other monstrosity, landing inelegantly in some nearby bushes. The tiger, meanwhile, begins to lose its cohesive drill shape, spinning out of control until it slams harshly into a thick tree, still with enough force to destabilize and ultimately topple it directly on top of the dazed monster, pinning it down. Fred seizes the moment without hesitation, raising his hands to the air and slashing the dirt in front of him with his foot. A swarm of razor-sharp vines shoot from the bushes and engulf the hyena's legs and hips. This time, no matter how fervently the monster slices, the vines sprout faster and faster with each wave. A smile that looks almost surprised spreads across Fred's face as he raises his hands into the air, the razor-like stems climbing further up the hyena's abdomen. As they finally fully wrap the hyena up, carefully avoiding any more of that rancid blisters coating its body, finally seeming to hold it in place for a good this time, Fred's stance crumbles. He falls to one knee, gasping for air as sweat pours down his face. Holy shit. You look at the large tiger and the hyena, both of them seemingly out of the fight for now. Are you okay? Mothoc, take me over. You usher Mothoc to head towards Fred, and he nods, trotting towards the shepherd. Yeah, I'll be fine. Just give me a second. Fred continues to breathe heavily before pressing his hand to his chest. You panic for a split second, worried that he's about to succumb to a heart attack. thankfully that doesn't seem to be the case. He seems to be merely taking a moment to center himself, taking slow, deep breaths, and eventually wiping the sweat from his forehead with his arm. Why wouldn't you let us help? You wouldn't be so tired if you actually let us do something. You chastise him as you approach, earning yourself a somewhat dismissive glare over the shepherd's shoulder. Chad, I appreciate the offer, but what could you possibly have done? I already said, you idiot. Be bait. Fred lets out a sigh himself, getting back to his feet. Well, whatever. They're both down for the count, so let's get out of here before... A deafening roar rips through the air, punctured by a heavy thud that shakes the ground. All attention quickly shifts in the direction of the noise, only to see the tiger having worked itself out from underneath the tree trunk and is now slowly standing back up. God damn it! Fred resumes his fighting stance while Mothoc grips on you tightens once more, his own stance solidifying yet again. Why do you keep getting back up? Just stay down! Fred! The shepherd peers over his shoulder at you once again and then lets out a long sigh. Fine. As his attention turns back to the enemy, he spots the tiger sprinting towards the hyena, who is still writhing against his bonds. No you don't, you bastard! Fred drags his hand through the air above him in an arc, the jagged remains of the collapsed tree trunk following its motion to snag the tiger mid-leap. But they miss, only managing to grab onto the tiger's ankle, which does nothing to slow it down from grabbing the vines holding the hyena up. Once he has a firm grasp of them, it begins to spin furiously, tearing them apart at their base and wrapping itself with them. As the hyena begins to fall, it squeezes onto the vines, following them down until it's about to land, at which point the tiger stops spinning, grabbing onto the hyena's arm. It pulls on its arm with its excessive spinning velocity, pulling it down to the ground rapidly. The hyena comes down with a claw outstretched, tracing it along the vines that had coiled around the tiger's body, shredding them the rest of the way. We're getting absolutely nowhere with this. We need to get them away from each other. Yeah, just like I've already suggested. Let us be bait. You get no response, but a flick of Fred's ear makes you realize just how harshly that came out, and you bite your tongue. Damn it, Chad. Calm down. I'm sure Fred's just as scared as I am. It's not fair to take it out on him. While you take the time to center yourself, the battlefield is strangely silent. Neither Fred nor the monsters seem to be moving much. They must need to rest too. Now would probably be the best time to attack, but... Fred's still shaking, his stance rocky. His focused expression is faltering as well. His features tighten now in frustration instead of concentration. He shakes his head with an irritated scoff. Using you as bait shouldn't be necessary. I'd rather just wrap you up with roots to keep you safe, but there's no way that's going to work with that freaking hyena's poison. Even though it seems the battle is at a complete standstill, the monsters are still creeping ever closer while Fred strategizes. Or at least tries to. Damn it, Chad! What can Mothoc do? I don't know. I mean, he definitely has powers, but I don't know what they do. Hell, I don't even think he knows. Fred peeks over his shoulder towards Mothoc, as if to confirm, earning himself only a shameful headshake from the big moth. His brow furrows further. Damn it! What about you? I can only really grab and hit stuff with my hand, but I can extend it so I have range. Mothoc nods confidently. Fred nods in turn, and his whole body rises and falls as he lets out a big, almost frustrated sigh. Alright, since I'm totally out of ideas, I'm gonna rely on you guys to separate them after all. Are you sure they're only after you two? Fred finally seems to actually be listening to you, and yet, despite the relief that brings you, it almost amplifies your dread. Yeah, I'm fairly certain that they're just after us. Alright then. Hopefully if you two split up, they will too. With an upwards flick of his fingers, Fred summons two tall, thick roots from the ground beside you, arching them a meter or two above your head. Use that range of yours to an advantage and monkey swing from these. Get as far away as you can, as fast as you can. And don't worry if the hyena cuts them away. I'll just make more. Just make sure that you stay ahead of it. As if on cue, both monsters begin to prowl once again, slowly stalking towards you, casting deep guttural growls in your direction, Fred ignores them. Once you're out of range though, you'll just have to use the trees. Can you do that? Yeah, shouldn't be a problem. Good. As for you, Mothoc, just follow my lead. Mothoc nods firmly, his grip loosening on you somewhat to allow you to go. By now the monsters are getting visibly angsty. You should move quickly. Alright, go Chad! You nod, thrusting your arm upwards and grabbing onto the branches with your magic hand. As soon as you make contact, the monsters break into a mad dash towards you. However, the moment that they take their first step, the roots suddenly extend rapidly upwards, dragging you up through the leaves, dangling you above the forest. Whoa! While taking a moment to catch your breath and hopefully slow your frantically pounding heart, you look down and see that Mothoc and Fred haven't moved. Your panic only worsens, but then you notice that the monsters have also stopped moving. They sniff the air furiously, seemingly confused by your sudden movement. The confusion only lasts for a few seconds though, and without warning the hyena leaps towards the root that you're dangling from, slashing it with its claws. Damn it! The root begins to crumble away, leaving you with the precious seconds to move. You get yourself swinging and just barely manage to fling yourself away as the roots begin to fall. You throw another punch towards the next root, but your hand flies over it, grasping at empty air as you begin to fall. Oh shit! Thankfully, the root responds quickly, tilting in your direction and getting close enough for you to slam into it and wrap your arms around it tightly. You let out a small sigh of relief and turn back to thank Fred, but you can't see him or Mothoc anymore, just a hyena glaring at you from beneath the dense tree canopies. You gulp harshly, frantically looking around for the next root, but there are none. Your heart sinks, but you aren't giving any time to think of what to do next as the root you're holding onto shakes. The hyena's now slashed this one too, and it's crumbling away already. Oh fuck! Before you know it, the leaves below you are getting very close, very fast. Shit, shit, shit! None of this would have been happening if Fred would have just nutted up and killed these friggin' things. The hyena has already gotten into a position beneath you, no doubt ready to carve you into sizzling, rotting pieces the moment you land. By some miracle, though, you slam painfully into a thick branch before reaching the ground. You grunt and try to cling on, but the force of your landing was way too much and the branch snaps under your weight. The hyena's eyes follow you as you ricochet from branch to branch down the tree, splaying its claws as you near the ground. It leaps at you with a howling shriek, and in adrenaline-fueled panic, you throw a punch at a random direction and pray. The moment you feel the sensation of it literally anything against your palm, you clamp down with the monstrous strength. Your velocity suddenly shifts forward, and you find yourself now crashing through more branches. At some point, you're pretty sure that you can feel the long claw pass beneath your legs, narrowly missing you. Unfortunately, the branch that was to be your salvation has its own limits, and it snaps too. You're unceremoniously hurtled through even more branches before finally meeting the ground, tumbling a short distance before coming to rest in a bush. As you try to shake off the dizziness, your blurry vision catches a glimpse of a brown blob slowly getting closer. As the ringing in your ears dies down, the unmistakable sounds of a growling, bloodthirsty beast fills the space it left behind. Fred! Mothoc! I need help! In a blind panic, you begin to scream, but the only answer you get are the distant sounds of combat echoing through the forest. Your focus finally returns to you, allowing you to process just how close the hyena has gotten, its claws splayed at its sides. Just stay back! Unsurprisingly, the monster has no reaction whatsoever to your command. You try to stand up and run, but as soon as your right foot makes contact with the ground, agonizing pain shoots up your leg, nearly forcing you back down once again. Shit. Fred! Heart pounding in your ears, you do your best to limp away, putting weight on your foot as best as you can to avoid the wound, but it's difficult because it's so big. Each step is another painful ordeal, only worsening your fear. Mothoc! A crunch beneath you sends your panic into overdrive, and you throw another punch towards the treetops, grabbing onto another branch high above you. The monster reacts instantly, audibly leaping towards you. However, with every ounce of strength that you can muster, you retract your hand, launching yourself towards it like a rocket. You do your best to put the hyena out of your mind, focusing on the direction that you heard the sounds coming from earlier. Not worrying about swinging anymore, you resign yourself to merely flinging yourself between branches, crashing into the ground each time. After only a few flings, you tumble back onto a familiar clearing with a grunt, spotting Mothoc and Fred ahead of you. Fred has seemingly captured the other monster, with kelp once again suspending it over the lake. For Fred! They both notice you, turning to face you. Fred's attention quickly turns back to the tiger while Mothoc breaks away from him to dash over to you. As he moves to pick you up, a massive blur slams into the moth, tumbling back out into the clearing. As soon as they come to a stop, you see the hyena pinning Mothoc face down, its claws drawn back, poised to impale him. Mothoc! Shit! Fred's attention falls from the tiger, and he turns to run towards Mothoc's rescue, but you are closer and react faster, instinctively throwing a punch towards a massive cyst-type thing on the hyena's back. It freezes in place, maw open wide, and its gaze locks on the moth below it. Time itself seems to have stopped as your magic hand begins to glow. It... the... It... In a panic, you try to pull your hand back, but it seems stuck in the hyena. You can't even dismiss it, and more faint whispers crawl into your mind like a bug with 1,000 legs. Me. The whispers are drowned out by a deafening screech, the monster howling in tremendous agony towards the sky. Pulling harder and harder to try and free yourself only seems to make it worse, the monster beginning to flail wildly, slashing at nothing in a frenzy. Suddenly, a strange yet familiar pressure builds behind one of your eyes, an itchy sensation like something is stirring in your head. The pressure quickly becomes overbearing, and you wince harshly, covering your eye with your free hand to try and stifle the pain. More. It feels like your magical hand has stopped listening to you entirely, the sensation of you grabbing on tighter despite your attempts to pull back, overwhelming your own palm. The hyena slams its claws into the earth, body heaving as it bares its teeth down at Mothoc, who is frozen in fear, staring back up at it as best as it can. The monster is shaking, but seems to have regained its composure, at least somewhat. It draws one of its hands back up out of the earth and moves to finally deal a finishing blow to Mothoc. Mothoc! In a fraction of a second, the hyena's claws begin to descend. A flash of blue, however, appears above Mothoc, and a mere moment later the monster is off of him. That's all you're able to see before a bright flash of light forces your eyes shut. A loud, crackling boom. A thud. A sharp, stinging pain fills your arm as your magic hand dismisses itself on its own. Then, silence. Once you're finally able to open your eyes once more, your hazy vision lands on a billowing blue blur. It takes a moment for your eyes to adjust, but once they do, you're able to recognize that blur as Bruce, traces of arcing blue energy crackling around its hand. But with a dismissive swipe, they vanish, and his hand disappears beneath the cloak once more. As your eyes slowly trail around the battlefield, you take in things bit by bit. Mothoc has already sat up and is staring up at Bruce with a twinkle in his eye. A moment later, his gaze shifts to you. Your eyes shift towards the lake, over the decimated clearing, the earth torn to shreds by Fred's roots and the tiger's holes. What little is left was rotten and dying from the hyena's poison. Fred is staring at Bruce in a light amount of shock, but his stance has already begun to relax. Past him, the tiger remains suspended over the water, completely still. Noticing this, your eyes drift back to the opposite direction, finding the hyena equally immobile in a crumpled heap a few meters away from Bruce. You try to speak, try to say anything, but nothing comes out. You're exhausted, confused, in pain. The adrenaline fading from your body only exacerbates all of that. It's all you can do to even keep your head up. Shepard. Bruce's voice calls out over the desolation and is quiet but firm. Fred perks up at his call, almost looking a bit ashamed after a moment, but you can still pick up a slight twinge of admiration in his gaze. Fred nods, motioning with his hand, causing the kelp to begin to grow, carrying the tiger's lifeless body over towards Bruce and the hyena. While Fred does that, Bruce moves over to the hyena, crouching down next to it and lifting it up surprisingly gently. He carries the beast using his scarves to help him, with care, almost reverence. He delicately lays the hyena down on top of the few small patches of undamaged ground on its back, which the kelp mirrors with the tiger's body. Bruce regards the bodies in silence. His expression is surprisingly somber, an emotion you were fairly convinced he wasn't able to actually feel before now. With a soft sigh, he carefully reaches out to the hyena's eyes. Your battle is finally over. I can barely make out those words as Bruce whispers them, carefully closing the eyes of the inert monsters. Fred joins Bruce next to the bodies, an equally somber look spread across his face. Bruce glances at him, which is seemingly enough to get a message across to him. Right. With a nod, Fred places his palm on the ground, which begins to faintly glow green. As he slowly retracts his hand back, a small plant sprouts beneath it, getting taller and taller as it leaves sprout all over its stem. Eventually, two flowers sprout on top, and after a moment, they bear fruit. Large golden berries begin to grow all over the plant. He nods again with a small sigh of relief, then plucks the whole thing delicately from the soil, handing it over to Bruce. You have no earthly idea what's going on, but you're too tired to care. At least it seems like the danger's past. For now, at least. Admittedly, you feel a lot safer with Bruce here despite your history. With a nod, Bruce turns back to the bodies and takes a deep breath. Do me the honor of bringing you some semblance of peace. Bruce's scarves then start to scan each body. After several moments of this, some kind of wispy colored gas almost slowly floats up from each body. The wisps condense down into small orbs that pulsate and glow like flames, floating above a scarf each. Bruce closes his eyes and lowers his head a bit, holding out the plant towards them, and carefully guides each orb over to it using his scarves. His movements are slow and methodical, clearly showing a great amount of care for these orb things. As they get close, they begin to dissipate into the berries, swirling around before driving in through the stem, imparting their glow gradually onto each one as they slowly fade away. Once they are fully dissipated, Bruce opens his eyes once more, staring down at the berries with deep reverence, cradling the dimly shimmering plants in his arms. The monsters continue to lay motionless, while all eyes are on Bruce in awe. Bruce takes a deep breath, flipping his hood back over his head before turning to you, casting a tired gaze at you from within the shadows across his face. Where's the third? His gaze is petrifying. You're not sure why, but you can't speak with him staring directly into your eyes. You open your mouth to say something, but no words come out. Bruce's methodical gaze tightens, and he begins to raise his scarves. Don't make me repeat myself, dog. I said... He is cut off by Mothoc, who hastily rushes in between the two of you, putting a hand on your shoulder, while looking back at Bruce, shaking his head firmly. Bruce's eyes go wide, his building fury faltering a bit, and his scarves once again lowering. Satisfied that Bruce was standing down, Mothoc relaxes a bit, dropping his hand from your shoulder to point back in the direction you originally came from. Bruce follows Mothoc's finger with his eyes, then closes them, shoulders rising and falling as he lets out a long sigh. All right, then. He looks back over his shoulder at Fred, who is idly looking around the remains of the clearing, scratching at his cheek as he finally takes in the severity of the battle for himself. Thanks. His voice startles Fred out of his trance, and he awkwardly rubs the back of his head as he looks back at Bruce with a forced smile. Uh, oh, no probs, man. Fred is interrupted by a dangerous scowl on Bruce's face, shutting up and shrinking into himself. Mothoc in turn begins helping you up to your feet and crouches down to give you a piggyback ride again. Don't worry, Mothoc, I got it. Mothoc blinks in Fred's direction, but then nods happily, stepping aside as Fred approaches you, putting your arms over his shoulder. Thanks, Mothoc. Mothoc nods, giving your shoulder a gentle pat. Mothoc? Yeah, that's his name. The moth? Mothoc shyly looks away, poking two fingers together with a blush across his face, nodding in agreement. Bruce's gaze softens and he huffs, almost in bemusement. Very well then. Mothoc. He says the name slowly, as if allowing his mouth to become accustomed to the sound. After a moment, seemingly satisfied, and he nods. You've done well today. I appreciate all your effort, but I believe it's time for you to head home. Mothoc shakes his head and steps closer to you, almost protectively. Ah, not to worry. I'm sure they'll be fine. Mothoc's antennas droop, and he looks over at you with a hesitant look in his eyes. The um, Mothoc is worried about you. Oh, don't worry, Mothoc. We'll be fine. I'll take care of this idiot. He playfully slaps your stomach, which surprisingly sends a rush of pain through your body. When you flinch and grunt in response, Fred flinches in return, a nervous sweat forming across his brow. And Bruce is gonna make sure nothing happens to the both of us. Bruce grunts under his breath, and Mothoc tilts his head, glancing back at you with a look of confusion. It takes you a moment, your very thoughts exhausted from the day's events, but eventually you realize why he's confused. Oh, Bruce is his name. You point at Bruce. Don't you point at me, dog. You glare at him for a moment before relenting with a sigh, lowering your arm. Guess he's still not too much of a fan of me. Actually, Mothoc, can you hold on to these? Bruce reaches back into his cloak and once again produces the berry plant, holding it out towards the moth, who nods, carefully taking it in his lower hands. Good. You know where to go. Go wait for me there. I shouldn't be too long. I need to take care of things here first. Mothoc nods and turns back towards you and Fred, extending his upper hands out to the both of you, staring at you both eagerly. A small grin inevitably spreads across your face, mirrored by Fred, who laughs quietly under his breath. You both reach out and shake one of Mothoc's hands. It's nice meeting you, Mothoc. Thank you for taking care of Chad. Thank you, Mothoc. I wouldn't be alive right now if it wasn't for you. Mothoc nods shyly, a proud, hopeful look in his eyes and a radiant blush across his face. Hey, when can I see you again? Never. Mothoc flinches, pulling his hands back and glaring at Bruce huffily, crossing his arms. We'll try and come back tomorrow, Mothoc. Don't worry. Bruce makes no attempt to hide a sigh of contempt, which Mothoc either doesn't hear or chooses to ignore, as his mood perks back up at Fred's words. All right, off you go, Moth. Mothoc nods and after giving one final wave, turns and walks towards the lake before following the shore, eventually disappearing behind the tree line. Is it really this way? Or was the moth just lying to protect you fools? You look at Bruce for a moment, once again tensing up. However, a squeeze from Fred relaxes you enough to actually answer. No, he wasn't lying. As far as I know, it's still in that direction, but it could have moved by now. Show me. You blink in surprise, looking to Fred, almost as if seeking confirmation that you heard what you think you heard. Fred simply nods, looking back at you. All right. With a deep breath and a large amount of Fred's help for balance, you hobble off back in the direction that you and Mothoc had fled from, with Bruce following you closely behind. Before you get too far, you take one final look back over your shoulder into the clearing. The two corpses are still there, and for some reason seeing them again fills your chest with an indescribable sensation. You shake your head and turn your head back forward. As you walk off at a snail's pace in complete silence, it quickly becomes apparent how late in the day it's become. The sun is already beginning to set, and you're starting to worry that you won't be able to make it back down the mountain with how exhausted you are. The voice behind you snaps you out of your worries, though. Tell me what happened to your foot, Doberman. Huh? He didn't call me dog. Progress, I guess. Still, I have a name. But I suppose you can't expect too much from a man who tried to kill you a few hours ago. Well, earlier when Mothoc and I were fighting the other monster, I used myself as bait to fling it off a cliff, but it managed to grab onto my foot. And, well, you see how that turned out. Shepard, can you... Yes, of course. And then what? Well, something caught its attention down the slope, and it let go to chase after it, tumbled down the hill, and then... You punctuate your answer with a shrug. Hmm. And you think it's still down there? I mean, considering how determined the other two were, I can't imagine that it would have been able to climb back up by now. Otherwise, it probably would have attacked us too. Bruce lets out a long sigh, shaking his head. Foolish dog. What? For your information, I didn't even know monsters existed 10 hours ago. How are you going to expect me to know everything that there is to know about them already? I'm not exactly a monster expert like you guys. For now. What's that supposed to mean? Bruce has a lot to explain to you, Chad. Bruce growls from behind, but doesn't contest what Fred says. The rest of the walk is once again silent, at least until the edges of the cliff you were searching for come into view, and you nod towards it. There, the monster tumbled down that slope. Shouldn't be too hard to track it, just follow the trail of destruction. Bruce pauses for a moment, then walks ahead of you, peering down over the edge. After a moment of analyzing what he sees, he nods, turning back towards you and Fred. Shepard, I'm going to need another one. Sure. Fred crouches with you and places his hand on the ground once more, in a similar process to before. Another small berry plant sprouts, this one producing less berries than the first. Fred plucks it, getting back onto his feet, and hands it over to Bruce. This should do. Thank you. He nods towards you both, almost like a small bow, but it's such a short-lived gesture that you barely even recognize it. Now leave. Then he forcefully flicks his head back the way you came. Without giving either of you a chance to respond, he turns back around and walks back over to the cliff, hopping off the edge and presumably sliding down. For the briefest of moments, you think that you can catch a glimpse of something weird on Bruce's back, but he's gone so fast and you're so tired that you can't really make any sense of it. This way. Fred takes a moment to readjust his hold on you, then begins leading you in a direction that hopefully actually leads back to town. Being thanked and then told so rudely to leave is certainly a new one. What the fuck is his problem? I think it's his way of saying thanks to you for taking care of Mothoc. Could it just kill him to just say that? Fred laughs, shaking his head in amusement. Honestly, yeah, probably. Ugh, what a charming guy. After walking for a bit, the silence of the forest is shattered by a loud crash and an echoing scream. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stops, once again leaving silence in its wake. You both stop for a moment, and as you gulp down another weird sensation burning in your throat, Fred closes his eyes, and just for a brief moment. Then you both continue without another word. You both walk for a long while in complete silence, watching as the forest gets darker and darker around you. You're very rapidly running out of energy too. You eventually are forced to ask Fred to stop to give you a second to catch your breath. Yeah, sure thing, bud. Here. He carries you over to a tree and sets you down against it, leaving you panting as you look up at him. Sorry. Nah, it's cool. You've been through a lot and don't exactly have stamina regenerating magic, so... You know, I thought my hand was pretty cool, but seeing you do anything in any capacity makes me feel woefully inadequate. No worries. It's taking me years to get to this point. A lot of really, really rough years. Your ears droop as you suddenly feel a pang of guilt. There is a moment of silence before Fred clears his throat. Anyway, we're never going to make it back to Marimambo like this, so... With a couple of flicks of his fingers, Fred summons up a few short roots, a meter or so in front of you. Then he moves up to the trees that you're leaning up against, tracing his pointer finger over to the surface and around the trunk in some sort of pattern. Once he's finished, he sinks his fingers underneath and begins to pull. Effortlessly, he is able to peel a big chunk of bark from the surface of the tree, filling the air with a distinctive sappy scent. You watch it in awe as he swipes a palm over the peeled portion, causing the bark to grow right back, as if nothing happened. Alrighty, bud, come here. Let's get out of here in style. With a confident smirk, he lays the bark down on the roots he had summoned up earlier, then returns to you. As he reaches down to pick you back up, you're once again blindsided by just how little you know about the situation and realize now that Fred has absolutely no excuse to not explain things. Wait. Wait. No more excuses, Fred. I'm sick of being left in the dark. I need an explanation now. I won't take no for an answer. You unconsciously clamber back to your feet to try and make a point, but as soon as your wounded foot touches the ground again, you flinch and fall back against a tree. Gah, damn it. Fred crouches down by your feet, holding a hand out. Let me see. You instead pull your foot away from him. No, stop trying to change the subject, damn it. Chad! You flinch as he shouts your name. This is too slow, fuck it. I will, okay? I'm going to. There's no reason for you to continue to be in pain just to prove a point, though. Let me help. You said it was a burn, right? Yeah, the monster's claws burned it really bad. Alright then, let's start with something easy, okay? You've seen what I can do so far, right? Pretty hard not to have, seeing as how you did it so much. Okay, good. Then to, I suppose, grossly oversimplify, I'm kinda like a druid from an RPG. I can control, manipulate, and grow plants. Within limits, of course. Like, I may seem super OP here in the forest, but we'll be boned in a factory. I can do anything that you can think of with this, but I can't do everything. Wait, what do you mean that you can do anything but can't do everything? Think of it like my base power is to manipulate plants. And if I use it creatively, I can do a lot of stuff that you wouldn't really think of just based on that initial starting point. But even the simplest new tricks take years and years of training. This explanation is shit. I know, okay? I'm stupid as fuck when it comes to explaining stuff like this. That's why I usually leave it up to Bruce. What do you mean, usually? If I continue explaining... like shit. Yes. Like shit, if I continue explaining it like this, you'll learn these things. Poorly, and that could be detrimental to your learning process overall. Which is basically why we came here in the first place. Bruce is way better at it than I am. I just didn't know the situation was going to get twisted so fast. And I definitely wasn't expecting there to be monsters. The casual way you say that implies you fought against them before, which scares me. Well, yeah, I have. What the hell have I gotten myself into all of a sudden? But definitely not as strong as these ones. Usually they're way more tame and manageable. Hell, sometimes they're even harmless. But these ones today... But... Fred puts his finger to your lips. And I can't explain things that I am not sure about myself, before you ask. That makes sense. It certainly feels like this is all surface level stuff, since I definitely feel like I'm missing a lot. It is, yes. There's a lot of things that we need to talk about, but if you're worried about the monsters, don't. I know after today the notion sounds stupid, but seriously, don't worry your pretty little head over it. How exactly do you expect me to just not worry after everything I saw today? You can only see your life flashing before your eyes so many times before it starts to get real old. And I mean dangerous or no. If there are more monsters like that, what would happen if they got into? Bruce takes care of them always. They've never made it out of this forest. Then why the hell did you bring me here knowing that there was potential danger? Couldn't you just called Bruce out, sent a text, wrote a goddamn letter? Were you trying to get me killed or... Fred, noticing you're about to dip into another one of your, moments, interrupts you by flicking your nose. Ow. Don't be silly. I have my reasons for everything I do, and you know it. You know me. Fred. His ears perk up in surprise as you tersely call his name. 10 years of my life is missing, and in those 10 years it's become painfully apparent that a lot has changed. You have changed. You can't possibly say that I know you when just a few hours ago I thought that I was the only one on the planet with any sort of magic powers. And when you would say monster to me, I think of a video game. And yet, here we are. You're a druid. I was almost killed in so many fun and exciting ways that I can't even count them on both of my hands. And this? You hold your foot out, shaking it to prove a point. Is proof enough that no matter how many times that I try to wake up, I never will, because this isn't some twisted ass nightmare. It's real. So no, I don't think that I know you, Fred. I don't think that I know much of anything. You look angrily at Fred. His face is stunned for a moment, but soon his ears droop and he looks away, ashamed. Well, you'll get to know me real soon. Whether I like it or not. A tense moment of awkward silence follows, only broken once Fred finally crouches back down in front of you. Anyways, let me get this checked. Fred inspects the burn marks on your foot. Hmm, it's not looking great, Chad. Should we go to a hospital? I feel like this is going to be hard to explain. Yes, we need to amputate. What? He snickers at your reaction, giving your leg a couple of soothing pats. Chill, chill. I'm kidding. I can have this fixed up in no time. Fred puts his palm onto the ground, and just like when he was growing the berries, it begins to glow a light green. As I was explaining, I can grow, manipulate, and whatever anything. So for this, we are going to need some. You see some thick green leaf-like things sprout from the ground, their edges rimmed in thorns, which briefly fill you with dread before you recognize it. You know what this is? Fred snaps one of the thick leaves off and waves it up at you. It's aloe. Something. Yes, aloe vera. Aloe vera is good for treating burns, and sure, it's usually only effective for, lighter cases. All it takes is the special Fred touch to really amp up its usefulness. As he says that, he stands back up, tossing the leaf into the air and letting it flip once before catching it again, tightly. Besides, it's still useful. It's an anti-inflammatory. It promotes circulation and inhibits the growth of bacteria and... Okay, I get it. Jeez, you don't need to sell it to me, dude. Yeah, I know. Just having some fun. Anyways, like I said, just rubbing this all over your foot would probably hurt like hell and not do much. So we need to add some... magic. I suppose, yeah. With another gesture, a root grows up from the base of the tree, arcing upwards and punching into the bark before snapping itself off and sinking back underground. After a moment, some sap begins to drip from the improvised tap which Fred coats his hands with and proceeds to coat your foot in it. His touch reignites the pain and you wince, but thankfully, he's working fast. He bites into the edge of the aloe leaf, peeling some of the green skin back and spitting it out onto the ground before rubbing the semi-clear, gooey innards all over your foot as well. Nearly immediately, the pain begins to soothe, but it's still somewhat present. Lastly, holding his hands on either side of your foot, each one glowing a familiar faint green, which quickly begins to surround your foot as well. The glowing, hastily thrown together organic salve begins to shift and flow over your foot, feeling like you were holding it under a faucet. Before your very eyes, the nasty burn begins to fade away, taking the pain along with it. It's like that little moth's pollen from earlier, but even more effective, as it's even growing your fur back too. See? Magic. Whoa. Just wait a bit more and it'll be done, buddy. You can be a pain in the ass sometimes, but I have to admit that this is pretty freaking cool. Thanks. Hey, no problem. It's taking me years of practice and study to get this stuff down. Takes a lot of knowledge and experience with plants to get it right. Is this why you didn't take me to the hospital? Fred scratches the back of his head. Well, yes and no. But, with how much there is that needs to be said, there needs to be a certain order to it. And that's fairly low on the priority list right now, believe it or not. I swear, I'll explain everything that I'll be able to tell in due time, Chad. But you have to bear with me and wait. What do you mean you're able to? There's a lot of stuff that I can't just tell because reasons. Because they haven't been written out yet. Is that really the best excuse that you can come up with? Come on, why are you holding out so much on this? I deserve to know. There's stuff that I can't tell you, not because I don't want to, Chad. It's because I can't. And based on what's happened with Dhoni's father, the more you learn, the more you'll be in danger. Hmm. Believe me, you're better off not knowing. But something tells me you'll eventually find out anyways. Ugh. I have so many questions. First Mothoc, and now all of this. It's too much. My head hurts. Yep, sorry, buddy. But, hey, check out your foot. At his suggestion, you look down at your foot, finding it completely healed up. Reaching down and poking at it, you find the skin's still a little sensitive, but it's certainly less painful than it was before. With a smile and a nod, Fred stands back up, helping you get back to your feet as well. You shouldn't have any trouble walking now. Give it a try. You nod, hesitantly putting your foot back down on the ground. It takes a moment for you to fully plant it back down, though. Finding that to be okay enough, you take a few steps, still a little hesitant to put your full weight on it, but once you do, you confirm that it really does feel all better. Whoa, nice. See? I told you I'm amazing. Heh. Thanks, Fred. Anytime, buddy. Anyway, let's get the hell out of this forest already. I'll finish explaining everything that I can when we get home. Sure, sounds like a plan. Fred walks over to the piece of bark seated on the roots, then turns to the side and looks at you expectantly. Um, well, hop on. Oh, and hold on tight. Wait, what? Are we not walking back down the mountain? Um, no. That'll take way too long. Just, remember back in school when we used to ride downhill on cardboard? I vaguely yes. Okay then, yeah. Let's just think of it like that. Except that this will be so much more fun. You raise a brow at him, but ultimately decide to heed his command, carefully climbing up on and sitting down on the smoother inner surface of the bark. The root platform is sitting on it, constantly shifting beneath you, causing it to be a little unsteady. I doubt it, but I suppose I have to admit that you do seem to know what you're doing. I should probably listen more. Maybe if I listen well enough, I'll inspire you to listen to me for a change. Heh, maybe. Sorry about all of that, by the way. I was, struggling to keep all three of us alive by myself, so I needed you to work with me, just so that I can focus on what needed to be done. No, 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 no. It's okay. I get where you're coming from. I should probably apologize too, seeing as I've kind of gone off on you a lot today. Sorry. At least you're fairly good at calming me down when it starts up. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's okay. Anyways, we can still go down the river if you'd like. There's a river nearby that goes all the way down to the park. Fred slowly gets onto the bark too, but he's standing on top of it in front of you, almost like he's on a big surfboard. With some hand movements, he summons up some ribbons out of the bark to wrap around his legs, holding him in place. Wait, you mean like surf down the river on this thing? Yeah. He summons more ribbons to hold you in place as well. For some reason, the idea of this incredibly improvised mode of transportation still coming with seatbelts amuses you. Huh. Well, as nice as the idea of a bath sounds right now, I'd rather not get all wet. There's a moment of silence as you look up at Fred's back. He slowly turns his head to look back at you with the biggest, toothiest grin you've ever seen him make. Then, in the lowest, most sensual voice he can muster, I'll make you wet soon. Wh- Wait, what? Here we go! And that's where I'm going to leave it for today. So, it seems that Chad and Fred are finally going out of the woods. Finally. It also. I'm not really sure what to think of the monsters yet. They do look like they're tainted or something by something or other that we don't, know about yet, obviously. Um, Obviously, Fred and Bruce, and I guess to some extent Mothoc, have been dealing with the monsters for a while. Obviously, Fred doesn't know about the moth, so like when he showed up, I was like, oh, okay. I guess this guy's, cool, whatever. But Bruce obviously knows about the moth and about Fred. So, I wonder what's going on there. Unless Mothoc is part monster himself. Anyways, but obviously Fred has been doing something all this time that Chad has been gone, quote unquote dead. So yeah, I'm assuming we're gonna find that about, or we'll find about that or whatever, in the next, parts. And what else? I wonder what was that, what was going on when Chad's little magic hand connected with the hyena's little thingy in the back. Like if he was hearing the hyena's sort of like thoughts maybe, because I mean if it was a tainted person, maybe it's the what is left of the person that, became that was like trying to talk to Chad, or maybe like the thoughts or something like that. Anywho, so what else? What else happened? That isn't from the next part of the video because this is 2 pieces. Obviously, Fred has a lot to, sort of talk about, has a lot of stuff that he has to tell Chad about what was been going on. And, he better fess up because, I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff that he could have, said prior to, going up the mountain, like sort of warning Chad, like, oh, hey, by the way, people have powers, magic sort of stuff. You might see some stuff in the forest, don't either engage it or don't, panic or something like that. Try to prepare him before he brought him up there and then have Bruce try to beat them up. So yeah, you kind of dropped the ball there, Fred. Anywho, but yeah, so, write down in the comments what you thought, and thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play Home Somewhere Else yourself, you can find it over on itch, and you can find a direct link to it from the Home Somewhere Else official Twitter page, which is public, and I have to keep mentioning this because people keep thinking that you have to have a Twitter account in order to view the Twitter links, but you don't, because Twitter is public, or at least these accounts are. So unless your country of origin blocks it, you don't really need Twitter in order to actually view the Twitter accounts. And most of the accounts that I link in the description have the link to their visual novels pinned at the very top, which it means that it's the first tweet or the first link or the first thing that you're gonna see. And even if it isn't, it's usually in their profile, which is like one of the first things that you also see. So yeah, so just click on the link. The browser or whatever you have will open it up and it'll be right there. It should be right there. If not, then that's on them. That's not on me. I can't link to itch.io because Google doesn't like that. Google / YouTube, because Google owns YouTube. Anyways, and if you would like to support the project, you can do so by going over to Patreon, and you get early access to builds of Home Somewhere Else, as well as stories Somewhere Else, which will eventually make it to the main builds, because you'll see it in the extra content, where it says stories coming soon. And those are like backstories or little side stories or just little silly stories for, Home Somewhere Else, about the characters, like some about Dusan before he was evil. Or about Toto, the little white dog that's super horny, and, the little antics that he gets up to before work, where, he runs into not Fred, Chad and stuff like that. And there's like plenty of other stuff there. So eventually it will make it into the story, but just not yet. And yeah, some other stuff, I'm assuming. I'll have to ask Zordy. And yeah, so I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.